Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make an adjustable wirework bird's nest ring. And this is what it looks like. So it's just a little bird's nest on a ring and adjustable. You can also just make the bird's nest itself if you want to and just keep it as a nest and use it for other things. You can like attach maybe jump rings through one side of it, use that as a pendant, or make some small ones, maybe use them for earrings. But today I'm going to show you how to make the ring. So if you want to learn how to do that, then stay tuned. And these are the things that you're going to need. You'll need a selection of pliers. In this case I've got a wire cutter to cut your wire obviously. I've got a flat nose pliers, and then I've got a round nose pliers. And then you need your wire. In this case I'm using some copper wire, and I'm using a 0.8mm, which is a 20 gauge, and that's going to be like the base of the ring and the nest. And then I'm using a 0.4mm, which is a 26 gauge. And then I've got a ring mandrel here that I'm going to obviously use to size and shape the ring. If you don't have a ring mandrel, you can just use something else round, like a marker pen or something that'll fit your finger. And then I've got my 3 beads here. In this case I'm using some small pearls, some white ones. I thought they would look quite nice because they're quite egg-like. They can quite easily look like eggs. But you can always use anything as long as it'll fit inside the nest. So get all your things together and then let's get started. So to get started, the first thing I'm going to do is bring out my 0.8mm wire, because we need to start forming the nest, and we're going to do that with this as the base. And to begin with, as we're working with it, I like to just do it off the reel, because it's a little bit hard to say exactly how much you're going to need, because it can change from one to the next as well. So I just say just take it a bit off the reel. And then you want to just leave a bit of a tail first, because you need to leave a piece that's going to then form the ring band. And I would say probably about, it doesn't need to be that long, obviously just really enough to go around your finger, but about 20 to 30 centimeters, if that, just enough for you to work with as well. So leave that amount of tail, and then what we need to start doing is start forming the base of the nest. And to do this, I'm going to get out my round nose pliers and then place them at a point on my wire where I have that bit of tail left. And then what I'm going to do first is start wrapping my wire around. So just to start off with, we've made a loop like so, and this will basically be the beginning of the base of the nest. So we can just continue a bit more. You can keep it inside your pliers for a bit, and then continue to shape it around. And then once you've done a little bit, you can put your pliers away and start just using your fingers to continue your spiral pretty much. Now what you want to make sure is when you're doing the spiral, you don't want to do it tight to each other. You want to make sure that there's space there and gaps, because we need to use that bit later on. But otherwise you keep spiraling it. And the good thing about this as well, because it's going to be a nest, and naturally nests aren't really, uniform, or because it's nature and that, so you don't really have to be that precise and specific about it. It can be quite messy, to be honest, and it'll still look nice, if anything probably nicer. So you want to spiral the base like this. You want to continue doing that until you reach the size that you want your nest to be. So just continue until you reach the point. You can obviously make it however big or small you want. Just make sure that you have enough space inside to fit your beads. So I think that's going to be about pretty good for the size. So what you want to start doing, you want to keep spiraling, but you want to make sure now that you start overlapping. So instead of just making it one flat piece, you want to start going up on the side and the outside. So basically start spiraling on top of where you've already spiraled, and then go back underneath a bit here and there, because we're now starting to shape and form the outside of the nest that comes up to form kind of the well that we're going to have inside. That's going to be the space for the beads, which would naturally be the eggs. So just continue. Make it kind of messy really, because that's a little bit more natural, I think. You can make it look however you want it to look. If you prefer it a bit neater, then do that. If you prefer it messy, then do that. So as you can see, it's hard to kind of say a specific length of wire that you're going to need, because you can really make it as large or as small as you want it to be. So when you're quite happy with how your nest is turning out and your sides of it, what you want to do is start bringing this wire back into the middle. And just push it down with your finger and have it go around in the center. Again, kind of making a spiral, but not a particularly neat one, just quite irregular. Working your way in towards the middle. Until you reach pretty much the middle, like so. So we've now made the rough shape of the nest, and then what we need to do now is cut off this length from the reel, because we're kind of done with that now. You want to cut it at a length that's roughly the same as the other one, as the tail that you left at the beginning. So I'm going to cut that there and put that reel away. And then what you need to do now is get the end of the piece you just cut and then feed it down through. If you can see, you kind of end up with a hole right in the middle from the first layer you did, and then from the one you just done on top. You feed the end of your wire down through that hole and just pull the whole thing through. Like so. And then you have this coming out at the bottom, right next to the other one. And this is what's going to end up forming the ring. So here we have the basic shape of our nest ready. So what we need to do now is keep working on the nest, and we kind of want to help bind it all together better. So for this I'm going to get on my 0.4 wire, and I'm going to take off a decent length. You don't need too much, like not several meters, but maybe half a meter to a meter. It all depends how much you really want to use. And again, I'm going to leave it on the reel, because I was going to use this for the actual ring base. So what I'm going to do is grab your nest, and then that same hole in the middle where you just brought your 0.8mm wire through, down through, you want to put this up through there. So put the end of your wire that's attached to the reel through that hole in the middle. And then leave yourself a good tail, because that's what we're going to be working with first. So that's what I said, roughly half a meter to a meter at the most. And then you have the rest that's attached to the reel coming out from the base, the bottom of the nest. So now we need to start using this 0.4 to start binding the nest together. So we start off just doing the same thing, just spiraling it around the bottom for a little bit. And again, do this quite roughly. Because a natural nest isn't all symmetrical and perfect. And then when we reach the outer sides of the nest, we want to start basically using the 0.4 to weave in and out of your other wires. So that's going to help bind everything together, but also make it look a bit more realistic in a way, because a natural nest hasn't got all just one kind of branches in it. It's got all different shapes and sizes. So there's no real recipe for this or anything. You just literally go around, take your 0.4mm wire in and out of the sides however you feel like, a bit randomly, and just so you feel like it binds it well together as well. And make sure you kind of go around your edges as well, so in and out, up and down and around. So it's all going to make it more secure, but also help give a nice effect to it. And you just keep going around. Nothing specific. You can change direction as well if you want to help with the look of it being quite natural and random. I think I'm just going to switch direction and go back on myself. Come the other way. So there's no right or wrong in this really. If anything, almost the more random the better. So you'll be able to feel as well as getting a lot more sturdy, and everything gets bound together. So you do this until you kind of feel it's good enough, which I think I'm getting there. Maybe one last one. Like so. And then the next step is to add in our eggs. So to add in our eggs, we're going to keep using the same piece of wire. This one is the one coming out from the bottom, it's still attached to the reel, so we'll still be using the other one that you've got left. You still should have a decent length left. And then what you need to do is basically get into position to add in your first bead. So I'm just going to first off come from underneath and then come up through where I want my first bead to be placed. And make sure it's a bit at the side, like this. And then I'm going to get my first pearl, feed that onto my wire. Let it fall all the way down, and then we want to make sure that this is placed where we want it to go. So it's going to lie roughly like this, and then we obviously need to just secure that in place. So we get the end of the wire again and we go down through the bottom of the nest. just wherever you think is suitable and where you can get through, and pull it all the way through. Make sure you don't kink your wire along the way, like so. That's the first one placed. And what you can always do is come back up just right around the bead, not in the exact same place because you're always going to pull the wire back up, but just like on the other side of it or something. And then you can always just wrap around the bottom of the bead a few times if you want to just secure it in place a bit more and give it less movement, like so. And then put your wires back, the end of your wire back down through. So that's the first one pretty well secured in place. So we now have the tail coming out from the bottom, and then you can either go around a few more times around the nest until you find where you want to come up, or you can go straight on to the next. To your next egg or bead. So I'm going to come up where roughly I want my bead to be placed. Like so. Then I'm going to grab my next one, put it on the wire, and let it fall all the way down, and then that'll be placed right around here. And we'll do the same thing and put your wire back down through wherever you think is suitable, down through the bottom of your nest, and then pull the whole wire down so your bead sits nicely. And you can always adjust them a bit. You can do that at the end as well, into the exact position that you want them to be. I'm just going to come back up again, just close to that bead, to just wrap around it a few times, like I did on the first one. So just try and feed your wire around the base of your bead and pull it tight so it stays there. And then back down through the bottom. Like so. And again, moving on to the next one, just doing the exact same thing, coming up through, and then putting on your last bead, and letting it fall all the way down, and then go back down through with your 0.4 wire down through the base of your nest, and then pull that, and again I'm just going to come up through somewhere else so you don't just pull the wire back up. And just wrap around the bead a few times. Just try and push the wire down with your finger. And pull it tight. And then come back out. You can either go down through the base again or a bit out the side. and then you can kind of just see, and you can adjust them if you want to. Just push them into place exactly where you want them to sit. Something roughly like this. And then whatever wire you have left of your 0.4 of your tail, you can just wrap that around the sides of your nest again to still again help secure everything even more in place. So again, just in a random way, because that'll make it look a bit more natural, I think. Go all the way around if you want to, whatever wire you have left. Wherever you can find space in between your other wires. And you can just continue either till you run out of wire or until you're pleased with how it looks and the security of it. I think I'm getting to a point where I'm quite happy with it. So if you're happy with it, then if you just have a little bit of your end left, or if you just want to cut it off, all I do is just cut it to a decent short length. Just so you have a little bit left, maybe a centimetre or so. And then you can get your flat nose pliers or your round nose pliers. And then you just kind of bend it around and start feeding it into anywhere random, really. In between all the rest of your wires. So this is just to get rid of your end. And feed it in there nicely so it's not going to come undone or come and scratch on anything or catch anything while you're wearing it. Like so. That's basically the nest finished. So all that's left to do is the ring band. And to do this, because we finished off the nest and this point formula wire we used for that, we're going to turn it around, and then from the bottom we had that wire, the point formula wire coming out of the middle that we originally put, that's still attached to the reel. So this is what we'll be using to then start forming the ring. And then what we need to do is basically start weaving these two wires together. And really there's no specific way to do this, it's really personal preference. You can either do the weave that I'm going to do, or you can do a different weave, that's up to you. So I'm just going to start wrapping around one wire first and push it down to as far as it will go. I'm going to wrap it around 3 times. Basically you're coiling your point formula wire around the 0.8mm, like so. I've just done that 3 times. And then want to just make sure your wires sit how you want them to sit. Don't worry too much about your nest because you can just adjust that afterwards. But then just start weaving them together. I wrapped around 3 times around the one, and then I'm going to go over to the other one and then wrap around 3 times on that. And every time you do a wrap, push it down so your coils are nice and tight together. Like so. So I've done that one 3 times. What you can do to help you is just flick out your ends a bit to give you space for easy access in between the wires. So we've done that one, and then we need to come back around to the other one again and do that one 3 times. And in my case, every time I'm wrapping, I come up through the middle, and then when I change side, like now, I've wrapped 3 times around this one again, and then I'm coming up through the middle, and to change sides I just go over to the other one and do the same thing. So basically you don't have to come up through the middle, you can also go down through the middle. It's going to be the same result, just as long as you're consistent. But basically you're doing a figure of 8 wrap, you can call it, but just with 3 wraps around each wire. And then this is just the weaver that I'm going to use for the ring. So you just keep weaving like this, up your wires, and you keep doing that for however long you need your weave to be, to fit around if it's your finger or whatever size you're making it for. So just continue with this weave, and then I'll show you what to do next. So I've now finished weaving the length that I need to form my ring band. And what you can do as you go, you can check it on, say if you have a ring mandrel or you're using something else, to check that you got the size as you go. So there's no need to weave too much, or if you need to weave a bit more. So what we need to do now is get rid of this 0.4mm wire. And what I like to do is, it's coming up through the middle, that's where I've ended my wrap. And then I get my wire cutters and try and get in as close as I can in the middle, in between those 2.8mm wires, and cut it off in there. Like so. And put your wire aside, and then get your flat nose pliers out and just try and make sure that the very end is not irritating or it's not in the way. So that's why I try and finish off in between the wires so nothing can catch on it. And you can always just use your flat nose to try and just flatten it down. Like so. And I always go over it with my finger just to double check. So that's your ring band ready. And then what we need to do now is just finish off your 0.8mm wires. And the way that I like to do this is because this ring is going to be adjustable. I like to kind of use them as a bit of an anchor. So what I do is I get my wire cutters out, and then I'll cut them off to a short length left, so you have a bit of a tail on them. Not too much though. And you have the same length on both of them. So you cut them to equal lengths. So we'll roughly have something like that left. Maybe that's about 2.5 centimeters, if that. You can decide how long you want them to be. Then I'm going to get my round nose pliers out, and I'm basically going to start off a spiral. And I like these to be as fine as I can get them. So I'm going to start right at the tip of my round nose pliers and the tip of the wire, and start rolling it. And you want to roll it outward. And then what I like to do when I do these spirals and loops is I just make the first loop to the point where the end of the wire meets back up with the wire, and I just go in and cut off about 1 millimeter or so of the very tip, just because it helps make it a lot more rounded instead of loop or oval shaped. And then I go back in, continue to spiral, and I like to try and keep it a nice close spiral so you don't really have any gaps if you can help it, and spiral it all the way down to where your weave is, because then you obviously can't spiral it anymore. And you want to make sure as well that it's nice and flat, so you can just flatten it down with your flat nose pliers. You do the same thing on the other side. So place the tip of your wire right at the tip of your round nose pliers and bend it around, roll it around. And again, make sure you do that outwards as well, so they're going in opposite directions. So I've done that, and I'm just going to go in and cut off the very tip of the wire to get the best shape possible. Get the round nose pliers back out and continue spiraling that all the way down. Like so. And you can see if you're happy with it. If you're not quite happy with it, you can open it back out a bit. Try and be a little bit careful doing that. Try and keep it in the curvy shape. I found that it wasn't quite tight enough, that spiral. I just want to tighten it up a bit more. So basically that will be determined on how small you make the very first loop. I'm just going to get my flat nose pliers and use that to help spiral the rest of it and position it into place. Like so. And go and have a look, see if they're even and if you're happy with them. And make sure they're nice and flat, because you don't want anything sticking out or irritating. So that's basically ready, and all that's left to do is shape the ring band. And I'm just going to get my ring mandrel out. If you don't have a ring mandrel, just use whatever you got. And obviously just go for whatever size that you want it to be or need it to be. I'm just going to go for about 1 or 2 sizes smaller than I need it to be, just because it kind of springs back out just a little bit. So you want to shape it around to give it the round shape. I just hold my thumb on the actual nest, and then the end of it you want to kind of push that underneath your nest. And just get it right in there into position. And then decide exactly where you want it to sit if you're happy with it. It's got the right size. And that's basically your ring done. So that's how to make a Wirework bird's nest ring. That sits nicely. And you can obviously make them as large as you want or as small, and use whatever materials that you want to work with. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching. Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make these macrame spirals. Now what I use them for is little earrings. They hang like this. You can obviously do different colour combinations